Honestly, one of my biggest surprises was people right away were able to build the agent in like 70% less time. I didn't expect like that quick of like such positive feedback. It was, oh my God, it just works.
Welcome to Agentic Edge. Today's episode is special. It is our first live recording coming to you from Pathfinder Summit, our global community conference. We are surrounded by hundreds of automation leaders who are exploring the future of AI and agentic process automation. And that means there is no greater moment to debut with such a topic as goal-based AI agents. This is one of the most exciting advancements that's redefining what automation and agentic AI can do. My co-host is back on the mic for this one. Kate Ressler leads our community and technical content strategy at Automation Anywhere. And this week, our special guest is Charlie Needelman. Charlie leads our product management for some of the key visionary concepts that we're doing, like goal-based agents and our autonomous agents. Charlie's been building AI-driven products long before most of us were even talking about agents. And today we're fortunate to have him joining us to give us an inside look on how agents are designed, how they understand outcomes, how we orchestrate actions, and how we deliver results. So Charlie, Kate, welcome to Agentic Edge. Let's get everyone on the stage here.
Hello.
Hey, thank you, Micah.
Charlie, I'm going to start off with what I think is probably one of the harder questions we'll ask you all day because it has such a broad understanding. How do you define AI agents?
That's a good question. It's different things for different people. So I'll put that first, right? So it could be this interaction of sort of the digital and physical world. In the sense of Automation Anywhere, I'm especially talking about goal-based agents where you give this AI a goal and say, hey, like your goal is to, let's say in this case, keep the grocery store clean, right? And then here's the tools you have. You have these robots, you've got these video cameras you can get feeds from, all these other things. And the AI then understands that and figures out how to use those tools to reach its goal.
Charlie, I've got another follow-up question for you. I think it's really important that we talk about the why. What were our customers running into that made you rethink the automation model?
I'd say one of the things that's really hard is when you get complex processes, right, that you need to automate, things fail and you end up having to maintain potentially this really complex thing that you might have done your best to sort of compartmentalize some of it, but it's still really hard to get together, and it doesn't do anything intelligent, right? It doesn't have this ability to think like a human does. So the idea of having an agent on our platform that can intelligently make decisions and even do things for use cases you didn't think about. The agent will understand the tools it has and can work around it, and you'll probably be surprised at things it can do when you least expect.
I like that. So it's really about expanding on what was possible before, right? Because we would run into limitations of what you can do with deterministic automation and try to break through that. An example that I use a lot is, hey, I want to have an email trigger for my automation. But if that came in and it wasn't formatted exactly right with those key value pairs so that my automation could understand it, everything breaks. I know that a lot of our customers, and myself included, have tried to build those before, but it would end up with, someone doesn't understand the formatting, and then we would end up with this like broken process. So take me back to kind of the origin story here. What was the moment that you realized that we could really do this differently and how we should do this differently?
Today, I would say there's two things. One of the trigger for me to think about agents was probably, I think it came out of Stanford, was, if maybe some of you have seen this, was this paper about someone figured out how to do agents using LLMs, but the story was like a bar where it had different agents that did different things, and they found out that they could get these agents to communicate with each other. That was the early paper, I think, that I remember. After that, I thought about our platform, and I'm like, well, we have the ability at this point to reach out to LLMs. Can we somehow, with the tools we have, do this? And so I actually put together like a proof of concept that got an agent, sort of before we had agents working on our platform. In fact, I did this and I presented this to folks at Automation Anywhere. And Micah, you were one of our first champions because right away you started asking me questions like, why this, why that? And I'm like, I just put this together, I just did this. And then I remember someone telling you to move on. But I really appreciated like your interest. And so that was really the spark. And it was like a bunch of months later that we really ended up saying, okay, we can do this. We can figure this out and do it in a way that meets our customers' needs, that's easy to use, that people can transition potentially from, let's say, people who do deterministic automation to understanding the agent world and being able to configure that just as easily.
I like that. I think my interest probably came from the fact that I was maybe running a Twitter farm of some agents that were tweeting on behalf of me. So I thought that was pretty interesting that someone else was using a large language model so early. I want to pop the hood a little bit on exactly how this works, because this is a brand new thing. We just released it with .38. For a lot of our customers, Pathfinder Summit and the hands-on sessions that we've been doing are their first opportunity to get hands-on with these goal-based agents. Myself and team had the privilege of getting a preview earlier on, but what happens when someone gives a goal to an agent? What is it doing? What happens next? How is it deciding how to accomplish said goal?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like to think of agents, I don't like to think of them as people. They're not people. They don't have feelings. They don't, they're not us. But I do sort of think of them as specialists. And sort of when they get this goal, the first thing that sort of they do is they understand the goal. They look at the tools that they have available to them. Usually you're giving them, might be text of an email, might be an ID of, let's say, claim for insurance, whatever it may be. And it then figures out what it needs to do next. Effectively, its goal is to meet its goal. And so it calls the tools it needs to based on the description, like a person might understanding applications. If it's your first day on a job and you have some background in that area and you're given an email with 5 applications, and here's the applications you need, here's how to log in, here's a description of them, you can probably figure out how to reach your goal for that day, right? If you're given a specific goal. I kind of think of agents like the same way. The difference is, I would say agents are more narrow focused, right? We don't have to be that narrow focused, but agents, today's tech, are generally more narrow focused at that level.
So why did you take this goal-based approach instead of focusing on task-based? If you're given a goal, you can figure out how to do it during the day. So expand on that a little.
Right. So, well, I mean, task-based, I still feel like is a little more deterministic, right? If I know I have an email and I just want the sentiment from that email, I can create a deterministic automation. I can then trigger an LLM to give me the sentiment back and move on. And I see that more as a simple request and response. But it doesn't give me the power to leverage AI to do something truly intelligent and do the process for me. My take is within a few years, most people are going to start first with these goal-based agents, right? Today, I expect most are going to start with process, deterministic, and all that, but you're going to start these goal-based agents because you're going to be able to just give them goals, give them tools, and they'll figure out the rest. They have the intelligence to figure out what they need to do versus the task is, hey, I'm telling you to do this very, very, very specific thing, and I just get a response.
At what point do we need to shift from an automation calling it an LLM versus a goal-based agent?
When you have something that I would say is more of a process, something that's more of a process that you can't easily do deterministically. It's not just a simple, again, getting the sentiment of an email. It's, we're going to get this email, we're going to parse it. And again, I'll just use the insurance example again. We're going to pull out the claim details from the email or a support ticket, enter the claim details into a database, check it against the policy for that customer, determine if that policy fits, maybe do a lookup of a police report if it was for stolen property. That's more than just a simple, hey, parse this email and get the claim ID. That's really a process that frankly sounds simple maybe for sort of a human, but when you actually try to automate something like that, it becomes fairly complex and you get to the point quickly where it's something you can't maintain under a deterministic model.
I like that. So if I were to reflect that back to you and use some of the language that we see in the product, we have tools that are purely deterministic. They would be like an automation that we build that might interface with an API. We have some tools that are more probabilistic where they can call an LLM to do part of what they need to do, like you mentioned, parsing from an email. And then we have more fully probabilistic where we've got the AI agent that is determining which tools to use and in which order. Does that match?
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you remember earlier, I mentioned agents doing their own specific task. You've got agents that are more supervisors that can also then just all their only job is to sort of dole out the different tasks to the specialists. It lets you handle even more complex processes without having an agent that needs to know too much. Agents, just like a person, you give them too much, they start hallucinating more, right? You guys have all seen this in the real world, even when you chat. It's about giving them distinct capabilities, but in a way that scales. So that if you give a manager agent, if you will, the capability to talk to other agents, they've got their own things. The agent doesn't have to know everything, and you kind of scale that up as needed.
I didn't realize we were going to go down the philosophy of management.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not that. That's what I'm trying to make clear.
If you do that to a human too, you overwhelm them with things. They're going to perform way worse.
But I would say, hopefully, without the bureaucracy.
Yeah. All
Charlie,
right.
when you have originally launched this, it was kind of a soft launch internally for a lot of teams to get hands-on and try this stuff out. I think it's kind of this weird thing where you probably had a vision for what this is and how people will use it. And then all of us jumped in and used it in different ways that maybe you hadn't expected, or we were seeing outcomes that maybe you hadn't originally anticipated. Talk about that process a little bit and some of your biggest surprises from having all these creative people jump in and use this thing.
One of my biggest surprises was people right away were able to build the agent in like 70% less time. Like I didn't expect like that quick of like such positive feedback. It was, oh my God, it just works. Oh my God, it's fast. Like I'm sort of a realist, and I didn't necessarily expect that right away. And I was impressed like that. I was like, oh, okay, people are loving it. The other thing that I didn't expect really was just this idea that in my head, let's say you're going through a spreadsheet of different, and again, the idea of the claim IDs again, or claims. In my head, I was like, well, people would probably use agents where they would go through each claim and send each one to the agent. But there were people who were saying, I'm just going to send this whole 10-line spreadsheet to the agent directly. That was an area where I didn't know how well that would work. Many months ago, I would have been 100% sure that would have been too much information for the AI and it would have gotten confused. But what we were seeing was it was actually doing the right thing, and in fact, able to figure out by itself that, hey, these 10 things, I need to get details on all these or need to put them in a database. I'm going to call all of these at the same time. So it actually called 10 with the same tool in parallel, sending the different inputs to each iteration of that tool all at the same time, which was a surprise for me. I did not expect that to work so well.
There was a diversity in the way that people were thinking about mapping data from agent to tools. And so I think there was two kind of key approaches that I saw from different people, which I thought was really interesting. Some people were in this camp of like a JSON schema, and I'm going to pass the full JSON to every single tool, and I'm going to expect a JSON back out. So I have this like structured format for the way that the agent interacts with tool and comes back. The downside of that approach is you, at a certain way, risk a lack of reusability for that tool across other agents. The flip side of that is we map all of the values kind of individually, or we use a list and we handle it that way. So how do you think about what's best, right? We're still trying to determine best practices in all of this area.
First off, that was a big learning for me too. That's a really great point, Micah. And talking to the people working on it, and honestly, I went back and forth in my head. Like initially, I was thinking, no, JSON kind of makes sense. And then as I saw people using it and looked at the different ways, while it might be a bit sort of initially more work to set up sort of distinct inputs, right? To not have a big JSON and to set up distinct inputs. Long term, if you're really talking about building out a process and you want pieces that are reusable, like you might write in code, having the distinct inputs ends up making that so much easier long run in terms of saying, hey, I have this thing and all it needs is like the claim ID. It doesn't need everything else. And so I can now have a different business unit that maybe has a claim ID, but doesn't have this other detail and just can send in the claim ID. I think long term, again, while initial setup might take longer, I think actually that's the better route. And I don't know that I would have said that when we sort of started this journey. I fully expect to learn more as customers use it. Like we're in this sort of journey together where hopefully we've done enough to enable everyone to make it easy. But in terms of best practices, I mean, if you look at even the industry, it is changing. Every few months there's something new.
I think one of the things that I found most interesting getting hands-on with this the first time was that I started to add tools, and then you write your agent prompt essentially, right? The action plan, the goals, and those things. And I found that when I added my tools first, and all of my tools had good definitions and defined inputs and outputs, and then I went back to have it generate the kind of agent action plan, it did a much better job than if I just tried to write it from scratch and say, here's the tools you're going to see. Talk to me about that process and what really is going on there.
Yeah. So one of the things we did was feedback up front that we actually prioritized based on that was this idea that we're not prompt experts, meaning the people using it, right? And so we wanted to really make it easy. So the first thing you see when you use our goal-based agents is essentially a prompt that says, what do you want to do in your own language? And it'll fill out the prompts for you. To your point, if you haven't created the tools yet, it doesn't have all the information. So if you then create the tools and click sort of the button to optimize where it'll read them, you actually get a better written prompt, and the agent then works better. Sometimes you put it in, you get the prompt written for you, and you'll see things in there that you realize, oh, that's right, I need a tool for that, right? Because it'll have steps that you'll realize, oh, I didn't even think about it. But ultimately, having more information in that case helps to create a better prompt to be more successful, which is cool, by the way, when it works right out of the gate, right? You just put in what you want it to do, and as long as you have the tools, it just works.
I think one of the other things that we've mentioned over the last couple of days as a key to success is having a human in the loop.
Yes.
How are you thinking about that?
That is super important. I think this idea that AI is going to take over everything anytime soon, while there's a lot of hype behind it, isn't the reality. I'm obviously pro AI. I love it, but I know the realities of where it is. You are going to need a human. And so we wanted to make it really easy to have a human in the loop, to sort of push that idea, to make sure that you guys, it's not a second thought. And so we made it easy to just have sort of a simple sort of switch, simple checkbox, if you will, that enables human in the loop automatically for whatever you may want it for. It defaults to, hey, telling the agent, like, if you get stuck at any point, reach out to a human, use this human sort of tool. For the agent to understand when it needs to reach out to a human and to have that ability is really critical to the success of your agents.
Human in the loop has really two expressions within the AI agent. There's the ability to turn on human in the loop with a rocker button, and then there's the ability to add a form as a tool. So you can be a little bit more specific and defined in the interface you want the agent to communicate with a human in. Talk to me about the differences you've seen there. Is there a reason to use one versus the other?
Some of this is what I know now. Some of this will be interesting. Again, this is one of those where we define this feature, and my first thought was it'll be interesting to see how customers use it. One is the simple, hey, it's a simple form automatically. The top part just is the agent saying what they want from the human. The bottom is just a text box where the human can enter the response. That's the default checkbox, human in the loop type rocker switch. I would say that's super useful, again, for quick POCs. It's useful for just if you get stuck, maybe reach out to this form because maybe you don't know what the agent might ask. But if you have a defined process where you know you're going to need a human, or you know the type of information the agent will need from the human, then I would say you want to use maybe your own form. So it might be, hey, I need a special process where if the claim is over $1,000, I need a human to approve it. Maybe that's part of your process. And so you know exactly the kinds of details that the human needs to see, and you know how to lay out that form. And so you might set up that form ahead of time and tell the agent, hey, when you get all these details, when you're ready, and if this thing is above $1,000, then use this tool, use this form.
I think another key when people start to implement AI agents is this concept of explainable AI. Being able to have audit logs to know why it made the decisions it did and when it made those decisions. And also this concept of provenance, right? Like, how did you arrive at the outcomes that you just told me?
Yeah.
In one agent build that we've done, we actually built that into the form itself so the user could see it. There's also this other side that's built into the platform with governance and the audit logging and data masking and things like that. Talk to me about some of those capabilities and what's happening there.
That's super important for any enterprise. Every single thing that is sent to the LLM or received from the LLM is logged. You can see that in our governance logging. So it makes it easy for you to see, hey, what really happened there? Why did it do this? What did it do? It also makes it easy to see things like, hey, what data was masked? What was blocked? Those kind of things, to be able to see that easily in the platform. I feel like that's kind of sort of a table stakes for enterprise AI.
So let's step back into like a little bit of reality here. Gartner is predicting that about 30% of Gen AI projects will be abandoned simply because there's unclear business value. What's the bigger obstacle right now, AI capabilities or value measurement?
There's a lot of companies out there promising sort of AI doing everything. And so if you set this expectation that all you need is AI, right, then you're setting the expectation too high. I am an AI advocate, but I'm also, again, I understand the realities of it. And so you now have maybe pitched internally to your company why you think this is great, because this company told you AI can do everything, and you've got these grand ideas, and then you go to implement it and you realize it fails some percentage of the time and I can't fix that, or it doesn't actually do everything that I really thought it would do. And now you've sold the expectation here and you've met something here. And of course you're going to get rid of that project at that point, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't meet your expectations. I think the key thing is to be honest with what it can and can't do. One of the things I love about our platform, to me at this point, the AI piece is, there's a lot out there and it's easy for anyone to use the AI components. The hard part, really, the tools, is having an enterprise grade tools platform that exists to create this. Because if you're an AI company, honestly, you don't really know how to make those enterprise tools. And that's not as easy as it might seem. We've had decades and decades of experience to create an enterprise tools platform.
So, Charlie, let's go a little forward looking here. Right. Where are we going next? What is next for goal-based agents?
I think in the near term, it's going to be a lot about continuous learning, like not just learning from an individual session, but learning from sort of other agent sessions, what they did, how a human responded, leveraging that persistent memory across an ecosystem to really understand more. I think the other key thing in my head is actually making it easier and easier and easier to use, right? Like where I don't want to even have to think about all the different use cases it might be good for. I want to be able to say, like, hey, I am in this industry. I'm trying to figure this out. Help me create something. Like here, you come up with a business case and you create, the automation for me. And honestly, doing some testing, and that seems to work. And not only that, but to be able to evaluate it. That's also going to be super key, right? We've got that coming out soon, but the ability to really evaluate your agents ahead of time to say, hey, are these doing what I want statistically? Are they working? And being able to build that, evaluations are going to become table stakes really soon.
So would you recommend customers do things like double blind processing, where the agent is processing, human is processing, and then we do evals to determine how did we do?
I absolutely think that makes sense. On top of that, you could even do something where you have an agent that leverages a human for help starting out when you first roll out some large percent of the time. As you become comfortable with the agent, then you can start sort of backing off, right? This is sort of an onboarding procedure, right? But you start backing off and letting the agent do more and more, right? But initially sort of having that in some ways sort of an A/B test, but to say, hey, look, is it doing what we expect it to do? That's part of it too. The evaluations I'm talking about are also using LLMs as a judge behind the scenes, where it's actually using AI to judge the AI to say, is it doing what it should? It sounds sort of counterintuitive, at least when I first learned about it, but it actually works.
One other thing we talked to Peter about, and I want to get your perspective on looking forward, is this concept of MCP tooling for agents. And we've seen that there has been a growth of kind of MCP indexers, where it's like the app store of MCP. You can go here and search through thousands of these things of varying degrees of quality and maturity.
Yes.
How do you think about that when it comes to making those capabilities available to agents?
There's a couple things. I think in some ways, there's a lot of learnings to get to when you're looking at your business, looking at this stuff to even start out with, regardless of MCP. And then from an MCP perspective, when I talk about us being an enterprise tools platform, it's coming out soon, this ability to use us. We'll have an MCP server, be able to use the tools on our platform and expose those enterprise grade tools to other agents. If you have a specialized agent in some other platform, I think ours is going to be best for a lot of situations, but there might be very specific things where it's tuned just for that thing and you still want to use our platform, our tools. We're going to be the orchestrator regardless. I think MCP is part of the solution. I feel like it's another thing that got a lot of hype that made it seem like it was everything, right? It's part of the entire solution.
Very cool. Well, Charlie, I want to thank you for joining us on Agentic Edge. This has been a great conversation. It's clear that Automation Anywhere is serious about the future of agentic process automation. And the goal-based agent release has been a fun experience to get hands-on, see how this works, learn. And I think all of us are collectively learning. And I'm super excited to see where this goes in the future.
I am too. And I'm actually really excited to not only learn from the industry, but learn from our customers and work with them to really build out something that's amazing.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Agentic Edge podcast. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. It helps more people to find the show and stay on the edge of what's next in enterprise AI and automation. That's all for me, and we'll see you next time on Agentic Edge.